Elena's voice trembled as she argued with her parents in their small kitchen. They weren't afraid of her being poor. They feared something else, that stepping into a rich man's world would only break her heart. "Mom, Dad, I don't care if he has money. I care that he's kind. Isn't that what matters?" Her father slammed his fist on the table. "You'll never belong in his world. People like us will only be used, then forgotten." Elena's hands curled into fists, her eyes burning with defiance. "I would rather risk being hurt than live my whole life wondering what real love feels like." That night, with nothing but courage in her chest, she made a choice that would change everything. Do you believe love can cross social barriers? If yes, drop an S in the comments below. The Morgan estate was nothing like anything Elena had ever seen. Wide iron gates opened onto a long driveway lined with oak trees, their branches arching like a cathedral ceiling. At the end stood a sprawling mansion of stone and glass, glowing against the evening sky. For someone who grew up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment where the paint peeled and the pipes groaned, the sheer size of the house was overwhelming. Elena stood at the edge of the driveway, clutching her worn leather bag. She had answered a notice for part-time help, someone to tutor a young girl and occasionally help with errands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and with her mother's medical bills piling higher each month, Elena couldn't afford to be picky. The door opened before she could knock. A tall man stood there, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, dressed not in a suit, but in a simple button-down shirt. His presence carried authority, but his eyes held something quieter. Fatigue, maybe even loneliness. "You must be Elena," he said, his voice calm but guarded. "I'm Wick." For a moment, her nerves tangled with disbelief. This was Wick Whitmore, the name she'd heard whispered around town. A wealthy businessman, widowed young, raising his daughter alone. Some said he was cold. Others said he was impossible to reach. Standing here, Elena wasn't sure what to believe. Before she could answer, a small face peeked out from behind him. A girl, no more than 8, with bright, curious eyes. "Daddy, is this the new teacher?" Wick rested a hand gently on his daughter's shoulder. "This is Elena, Lily. She's going to help you with your reading and math." Lily beamed and ran forward, her little sneakers tapping against the marble floor. "Hi, Elena. Do you like stories?" "I love stories." The warmth in the child's voice disarmed her completely. Elena knelt down, smiling despite the knot in her stomach. "I love stories too. Maybe you can tell me your favorite one later." Inside, the house felt both enormous and empty. High ceilings, polished floors, elegant furniture, all spotless, all expensive, but strangely lifeless. Elena's eyes darted from a chandelier that probably cost more than her family's entire apartment to the long dining table set for 12 but used by only 2. Wick noticed her hesitation. "It can feel too much sometimes. But Lily and I manage." His tone softened briefly when he glanced at his daughter, then hardened again as he returned his gaze to Elena. "I should be clear. I don't let just anyone into this house. I need someone dependable, someone who understands boundaries." Elena nodded, though she wondered if she truly belonged here. "I understand. I just need the work." For the next hour, she watched Lily chatter about her books and toys, her laughter echoing off the tall walls. Wick stood nearby, arms crossed, observing quietly as if waiting for Elena to make a mistake. Yet when she helped Lily sound out a difficult word, the corners of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. By the time Elena left that evening, she felt the weight of 2 different worlds pressing against her chest. At home, bills lay unpaid, her mother's cough worsening by the day. Here, wealth overflowed, but it was wrapped in silence and unspoken grief. As she walked down the driveway under the fading sunset, Elena couldn't shake the thought. Perhaps Wick's riches had built walls higher than any she had ever faced. And now, somehow, she was stepping inside them. The days turned into weeks, and Elena found herself spending more and more time at the Whitmore estate. What had begun as a part-time job quickly became something deeper. Something she hadn't expected. Each morning, she arrived to find Lily waiting at the door, bouncing with excitement. They would sit at the long dining table, math books spread out between plates of pancakes. Lily's giggles filled the air as Elena turned lessons into games. 3 + 3 =? Elena would ask, covering the answer with her hand. Lily would wrinkle her nose in concentration before shouting, 6, and clapping her tiny hands with triumph. Wick often lingered nearby, pretending to read the paper. Elena could feel his watchful eyes, cautious yet curious. He rarely spoke during lessons, but every so often she caught the faintest glimmer of pride when Lily succeeded. In the afternoons, Elena and Lily moved to the garden. It was perfectly landscaped, but Elena noticed that despite its beauty, it lacked warmth. No wildflowers, no personal touch. One day, she brought a packet of sunflower seeds from home. "These are my favorite," she told Lily. Together they planted them along the fence, their hands dirty with soil. Wick returned from a business call to find his daughter kneeling in the dirt, laughing with Elena. His brows lifted in mild surprise. He didn't stop them, though. At night, Elena often stayed for dinner. The dining room, once echoing with emptiness, began to feel a little less cold. She would tell Lily bedtime stories, her soft voice carrying through the grand hallways. Wick, standing outside the bedroom door, sometimes paused longer than necessary, listening. But despite the warmth growing between them, secrets lingered. Wick noticed details he couldn't ignore. Elena's shoes were worn at the soles, yet she polished them carefully. Her phone was cracked, screen flickering, but she hid it quickly if it rang. Once he glimpsed her slipping leftover food from dinner into a small container, tucking it carefully into her bag. She smiled when Lily hugged her goodnight, but her eyes carried a quiet weight. One evening, while Elena was helping Lily with a drawing, Wick finally asked, "You always take the extra food. Why?" His tone was calm, not accusing, but firm. Elena froze. For a moment, she considered lying, but Lily's trusting eyes stopped her. "My mom's sick," she admitted softly. "She can't work anymore, and sometimes there's not enough at home. I didn't mean to hide it. I just didn't want pity." Silence filled the room. Wick's jaw tightened, not out of anger but something else. Recognition. He remembered the years after his wife passed, when he too had felt helpless, stretched thin despite all his wealth. Money had never bought back what he'd lost. He nodded slowly. "You should have told me." Elena looked away. "I didn't want you to see me as less." Wick didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over and adjusted Lily's blanket, his hand steady. "Kindness doesn't make you less," he said at last, his voice low. From then on, something shifted. Wick's guarded demeanor softened, if only slightly. He still kept his distance, but there was a gentleness in the way he looked at her, an unspoken respect. Elna, for her part, began to realize that beneath the mansion walls, Wick was as lonely as she was. And though neither of them said it out loud, both knew that the lines between employer and guest were beginning to blur. The illusion couldn't last forever. One late afternoon, Elena left the estate earlier than usual. Wick had been called away for business, and Lily had already dozed off in her room. Elena clutched the small container of food Wick's chef had packed, grateful, yet uneasy. She hated taking charity, but her mother's health was worsening, and medical bills stacked higher each week. She hurried through the bus ride, hoping to slip home unnoticed. But Wick, returning earlier than expected, had seen her leave. Something about her hurried steps gnawed at him. Against his usual restraint, he followed. The neighborhood was a stark contrast to his gated estate. Cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, buildings leaning tiredly against each other. He found himself outside a rundown apartment complex. Through a dimly lit window, he saw Elena kneeling beside an older woman in bed, adjusting pillows and spooning soup from the container. The truth hit him like a quiet blow. Elena wasn't just modest, she was struggling. He lingered outside, guilt tugging at him. He had judged her guardedness as pride, her silences as distance. But now he saw the truth. She carried the weight of two worlds, caring for her mother in poverty while stepping into his world of wealth. He turned to leave, but a sharp voice froze him. "What are you doing here?" Elena's father stood in the hallway, a man with rough hands and weary eyes. Behind him, her mother stirred, coughing softly. Wick straightened, unaccustomed to being caught off guard. "I came to check on Elena," he admitted. The man's gaze hardened. "So you're the rich one, the one she works for." Elena appeared in the doorway, startled. "Wick?" Her voice trembled between gratitude and fear. Her father stepped forward, protective. "Listen to me. My daughter doesn't belong in your world. People like you take and discard. You'll break her spirit, just like the world has broken the rest of us." Wick held his ground, though the words stung. "I don't see Elena as less. She's—" He stopped, catching himself before saying too much. Her father shook his head. "It doesn't matter what you think. Money builds walls. People like us can't climb them. She'll always be on the outside, and you'll never understand what that costs." Elena's cheeks burned as tears welled in her eyes. "Dad, stop. He's not like that." Her father's voice cracked, raw with fear more than anger. "You think love erases everything? You think money won't remind you every day that you don't belong?" The room fell silent. Even Wick, usually sharp with words, had none. Finally, Elena whispered, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Maybe I don't belong in his world, but for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere. With Lily. With him. Isn't that worth something?" Her father's face softened for a moment, torn between love and fear. But he turned away, muttering, "One day you'll see I was right." Wick left that night with more questions than answers. He had come to confirm what he suspected, and instead, he had witnessed a truth he couldn't ignore. Elena wasn't just fighting poverty. She was fighting for her right to choose love, even if it meant defying her family. And for the first time, Wick wondered if his wealth, the very thing that shielded him, was also the greatest barrier between them. The tension in Elena's world grew heavier with each passing day. At home, her father's warnings echoed like thunder in her ears. Every time she left for the Whitmore estate, he would mutter, "You're chasing a life that will spit you out." Her mother, too weak to intervene, would only grasp Elena's hand, whispering, "Be careful, honey. Don't lose yourself." At the estate, things were no easier. Rumors had begun to swirl in town. People whispered that Elena was just another pretty face trying to climb into wealth. Neighbors she had known all her life avoided her gaze. Even at the grocery store, the cashier smirked. "Must be nice working for Mr. Whitmore." The words dripped with judgment. Wick noticed the shift as well. His business associates raised their eyebrows when Elena accompanied him and Lily to a local event. "Interesting choice of company," one remarked with a smug smile. Wick's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, only placing a steadying hand on Elena's back. Despite his silence, Elena felt the weight of it all. Every glance, every whisper reminded her of the chasm between them. At night, when Lily begged for another story and Wick lingered in the doorway, Elena's heart ached with a mixture of joy and fear. This life was warm and inviting, but was it truly hers to claim? One evening, the pressure boiled over. Elena sat at the kitchen counter of the mansion, helping Lily with a puzzle. Wick returned from a late meeting, his shoulders stiff, his expression carved in stone. "We need to talk," he said. Lily glanced between them, sensing the tension. "I'll finish this later," she whispered, slipping away. Elena braced herself. "What is it?" Wick leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Your father came to see me." Her breath caught. "What?" "He wanted to make it clear that you don't belong here, that being with me will only hurt you." Elena's chest tightened. "And what do you think?" Wick hesitated, the silence stretching. Finally he said, "I don't want to hurt you, Elena, and I can't deny that my world, it's complicated. There are expectations, judgments, things you shouldn't have to face. You already carry so much." Her eyes burned with tears. "So you're saying I should walk away?" "I'm saying—" He exhaled, his voice breaking for the first time. "I don't know if love is enough to shield you from all of this. I've lost before. I can't bear to lose again, especially not because I dragged someone into a life they never asked for." The words pierced deeper than she expected. For a moment, the warmth of the mansion felt as cold as marble. She thought of her father's warnings, of her mother's tired eyes. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was foolish to believe love could erase the lines society had drawn. She whispered, "So what do you want me to do, Wick? Leave? Pretend none of this ever happened?" Wick's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "I want you to be free to choose. Not because I said so. Not because your father said so. But because you know what you're willing to risk." Her heart pounded. For the first time, the choice was laid bare. Walk away and return to the safety of her world, however small it was, or stay, knowing the road ahead would be hard, filled with judgment, conflict, and sacrifice. Elena wiped her tears, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "Then my choice is simple. I won't run. I'd rather stand here and fight for something real than go back to a life where I feel nothing." Wick's eyes darkened, torn between relief and fear. He wanted to believe her, but he knew the storm had only begun. And outside, as rain began to lash against the mansion windows, the world seemed to agree. The hardest test was still to come. The storm outside raged for hours, thunder rolling like an angry drumbeat. Elena sat by the window with Lily curled against her, reading aloud to drown the sound of the rain. Wick paced the living room, his mind heavy with everything unsaid. Then the phone rang. Elena answered, her face draining of color. "It's Mom," she whispered, trembling. "She collapsed." Within minutes, Wick had his car keys in hand. "Get Lily." "We're going." The hospital smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion. Elena's mother lay in a narrow bed, tubes and monitors surrounding her frail body. Elena clutched her hand, tears spilling freely. "I'm here, Mom. Hold on." Wick stood in the doorway, Lily at his side. He wasn't a man who showed emotion easily, but watching Elena break shook him. Without hesitation, he approached the doctor. "Do whatever it takes, I'll cover everything." Elena turned, eyes wide. "Wick, no, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his voice firm. "Your mother deserves care. You deserve peace. This isn't charity, it's what people do when they care." Her father arrived minutes later, his face lined with worry and pride. The sight of Wick standing at Elena's side, holding Lily close, stopped him cold. For once, he had no harsh words. He saw the truth in front of him. This wasn't about money or pride. It was about family. As the night dragged on, the storm outside calmed. Elena sat beside her mother's bed, Wick on one side, her father on the other. For the first time, the barriers seemed to crumble. Her father spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it isn't the money that defines a man, but how he uses it." His gaze met Wick's, steady and reluctant. "If you truly care for her, then prove me wrong." Wick nodded, his eyes never leaving Elena's. "I intend to." Hours later, Elena's mother stirred, her eyes fluttering open, weak but alive. Relief washed over the room like sunlight after a storm. Elena collapsed into tears, clutching her mother's hand as Wick's steady arms supported her shoulders. By morning, the family gathered in the hospital's small cafeteria. Exhaustion hung heavy, but something new lingered too. Acceptance. Lily, half asleep, leaned against Elena, her small fingers tangled with hers. Wick watched them both, a quiet promise in his heart. When Elena's father finally broke the silence, his words were softer than she had ever heard. "If you choose this path, Elena, if you choose him, then you do it with my blessing. Just don't forget where you come from." Elena's throat tightened. She reached across the table, her hand covering her father's. "I'll never forget." Wick placed his hand over both of theirs. No grand speeches, no declarations, just the quiet weight of commitment. In that moment, Elena realized that love wasn't about erasing differences. It was about building something new on top of them. Wick's wealth hadn't saved her, and her poverty hadn't shamed him. What saved them was the choice to stand together, even when the world said they didn't belong. As dawn broke, light spilling into the hospital windows, Elena leaned her head against Wick's shoulder. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't standing between two worlds. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Life slowly settled into something new. Elena's mother regained strength with proper care, and though her father remained cautious, he no longer tried to stand in her way. At the Whitmore estate, the once empty halls now echoed with Lily's laughter and Elena's gentle voice. Dinner tables that had felt cold and oversized now overflowed with warmth. Simple meals, roast chicken, fresh bread, mashed potatoes, were shared like feasts. One evening, as they sat in the garden, Lily pointed to the soil where sunflowers had begun to sprout. "Look, they're growing!" she shouted with delight. Elena smiled softly. "Sometimes it just takes patience and care." Wick met her eyes, and in that glance lay the promise of something lasting. They raised glasses of water together, Wick, Elena, Lily, and her parents, clinking them under the fading light. "To new beginnings," Wick said. "To family," Elena added. "To love," Lily giggled. Even Elena's father chuckled, repeating the word. And for the first time, everyone laughed together. In that simple moment, the mansion didn't feel like a world divided by wealth and poverty. It felt like home, rebuilt not by money, but by love. Do you believe real love can turn two worlds into one family? If yes, drop a H in the comments below.